Ghost of Tsushima is one of the most boring games I've ever played. Probably the most. It's not bad enough to laugh at or enjoy ironically, but it's not good enough to actually be enjoyable for any length of time either. And looking at the reviews, I'd say it's overrated. Yeah, it's going to be another overrated video. Sorry guys. Anyways, let's talk about it. I played this game on a PS4 version because I wanted to see how it looked and played when it came out, and it still looks good, mostly. As far as the graphic fidelity is concerned, it definitely looks like a last gen game, but it was still pretty. I think the sound effects were a bit lackluster though. My hits didn't really feel that impactful. This is an overlooked part of game design in my opinion. Although it wasn't terrible, it would have been better if my attacks had more weight behind it. The combat was decent enough, although it is a bit slow for my liking. I wish the max sensitivity was higher, and the camera isn't the greatest. I think it's too close for combat. I also find myself adjusting the camera manually a lot during combat, and that shouldn't really happen. And I don't like how the autolog doesn't automatically switch to another enemy when you defeat one. That's kind of annoying and makes the sword combat feel kind of clunky. I only found the autolog useful when I was fighting only one enemy at a time. But when you're fighting multiple enemies, it feels much less useful and even clunky at times. By far I prefer the sword combat. I rarely ever use my bow or stealth except for when I needed to. And I found the mandatory stealth sections kind of tedious because it slows the pacing down too much. The stealth is pretty basic. You distract enemies and either assassinate them or move by undetected. There's also the focus hearing mechanic that lets you see enemies behind walls, and yeah, that's the stealth. There are different enemy types that you encounter. There's the guys with swords, spears, shields, archers, the brutes, and the dogs. And there's different stances to use for different enemy types to break their guards. Although the stances didn't really feel that different to me. I just knew that certain stances were needed to break the guards of certain enemies. The stances serve no purpose outside of that. I wish this mechanic had more depth. I played this game on medium and the difficulty was mostly fine. The enemies telegraph their moves pretty well and there are clear counters to their attacks. That is until the boss fight with Koden Khan. I think it was a little annoying and the punishment windows for him weren't always clear and consistent. But other than that, the game seemed mostly fair. The open world is bad. It's a barren wasteland. The only good thing about it is the fact that it looks nice graphically. The activities within the open world were very sparse and it's not dense enough. The world is way too big for the amount of content there is. There were no landmarks that caught my attention or made me want to explore it. The traversal was boring. You either travel by foot or by a pretty slow horse. This wouldn't be too bad if the open world wasn't so empty. So if you're not going to make the open world interesting, at least let us travel it quickly. And yes, I know there's fast travel, but there's still going to be a lot of times where you're traveling manually. We eventually get this little hook, grapple thing that lets us swing between ledges, which is pretty neat I guess. But other than that, the traversal was pretty basic and I used fast travel as much as I could. I really don't like the pacing of this game. The game constantly ruins the tension by making me do things I don't want to do, like looking for some stupid clues to a mystery I don't care about, following someone while they talk, or watching one of the endless number of cutscenes. It would be different if the cutscenes were actually good, but they're not. It's mostly just two characters talking, no interesting visuals, camera angles, nothing. Just camera A, camera B type shit of characters spouting dialogue. I was so fed up with this, especially towards the end when I just wanted to finish the game. I think this game would be way more enjoyable if you skipped the cutscenes, because there's just so many of them. I don't know why these developers want to make these games into interactive movies. Not to mention you can't skip the cutscenes on your first playthrough. Why? I'm honestly starting to think this is just a way to artificially extend the game's runtime. I was only having fun with the game when I was in combat. I just want to slice up enemies with my katana, and I'm annoyed when I can't do that. The side quests were boring and uninteresting. Firstly, there are these Mongol outposts. You just fight a bunch of enemies, complete a few objectives, and fight a boss fight, in quotes, which is literally just a regular enemy with a bigger health bar. Then there are the other side quests. They're just like the story missions. You fight some guys, travel with a character, watch a cutscene, repeat. I refuse to play most of the side quests. They're all boring and not worth my time. There's one cool gameplay moment where Jin kills a Mongol general, and it causes the entire Mongol fleet to flee in terror. And that introduced our ghost stance, where if you kill 7 enemies in a row without getting hit, you get ghost stance, which causes the enemies to freeze or run away in terror while you get a few one-shot kills. That was actually a pretty cool moment, and I wish there were more moments like this in this game. I didn't like the story at all. It was boring and generic. The dialogue was very bad in this game. It's boring and very on the nose. Characters just express exactly what they think and feel or giving exposition, and it lacks any subtlety. It's boring. No personality is displayed through the dialogue. Everyone talks the same way and gives the same flat delivery. None of the characters seem distinct from one another. The writers try to get us to care about the characters by just telling us backstory about them, and it's just so boring. There are no funny jokes, no witty banter, no cute moments. It's just characters talking. So much talking. There's way too much telling instead of showing in this story. I didn't find any of the characters interesting in the slightest. I find Jin to be a boring and generic protagonist. He's a samurai with a strict code of honor but has to bend that code for the greater good. His goal is to save his uncle from a group of invaders called the Mongols, while gaining allies and helping people along the way. Pretty standard story, but I don't think the theme about honor was handled very well. First of all, this theme is very on the nose, just like everything in the story. Characters talk about it constantly. We rarely see Jin silently contemplating his ideals. We see Jin bend his code, but he doesn't really seem to suffer that much from doing so. His uncle says he disagrees with it multiple times, which is done in a boring and unengaging way. No tension there. Then his uncle puts him in prison, but he immediately escapes with no issue. Then he gets poisoned by the very poison he helped create, which could have been interesting, but then he gets immediately saved by Yuna. So, whatever, I guess. He does have a duel with his uncle at the end, but Jin obviously wins. And Jin's uncle does start to get kind of annoying after a while, constantly bitching about Jin actually defeating the enemy and trying to win this war. I get that he wants Jin to keep his honor, but he never realizes that Jin's methods might actually be useful, or even necessary when facing such an enemy. I understand that's the point, but it would have been nice for Shimura to have an actual character arc, and realize that Jin might have a point, but he's the same all the way through. The execution of these themes falls completely flat. Yuna is a boring, strong female character with little personality. She's strong, she fights, and yeah, that's about it. She tells us some backstory about herself, but I don't care, because it's just words. Yuna and Jin's relationship is non-existent. The only thing they have in common is that they want to defeat the Mongols. There's no cute dialogue between them, no girl flirting, they just talk about things they did in the past. Then there's this shoehorn scene where Yuna confesses her love for Jin, and it's as if she had the script in her hand while saying it. Very on the nose dialogue, and their relationship wasn't shown to us in a convincing way. Then there's Taka. Apparently he's Yuna's brother, but you will only know that because they tell you. Because none of these people feel like they're in relationships at all. They just talk about things. And when Taka dies, I felt absolutely nothing, because I didn't know who the fuck he was. Ryuzo is the friend character, and yeah, apparently they have a history together, but I don't care because they only talk about it in passing dialogue. His portrayal had the potential to be interesting, but it's not because Jin and Ryuzo's relationship isn't fleshed out at all. We don't get a single flashback of them together. And his portrayal also comes out of nowhere. Him and Jin were apparently best friends. They fought together throughout the game, then he all of a sudden is willing to kill Jin and burn his own people alive because his men were hungry. Was that really the best option? Are you telling me that there was absolutely no way he could get his men some food? Why didn't Jin suggest helping him get food? It's such a stupid and flimsy motivation. All they had to do was make it so that the Mongols were holding one of Ryuzo's loved ones hostage, and they would kill them if Ryuzo didn't kill Jin. That would have been a much more solid and believable motivation. But instead he kills his own people for food, as if he can only get food from the Mongols. Yeah, this plotline just wasn't very engaging. Our main antagonist is Kodan Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, and he's the villain. That's pretty much all you need to know for this character. That's all you have to go on. He wants to rule people and conquer because that's what Mongols do, I guess. Why does he want to conquer? Don't know. Are there any deeper motivations of why he wants to conquer besides just wanting power? Don't know. He's not intimidating or has any screen presence whatsoever. He's just the bad guy. So yeah, I think Ghost of Tsushima is overrated. The gameplay was a mixed bag. The combat was the best thing about it by far. It was decently fun for most of the game. It had a few gimmicks, but overall it was pretty basic. It could have been made better with a few changes though. But yeah, the combat was fine for the most part. The open world wasn't very good at all. It was dull and uninteresting to explore. Side quests weren't very interesting, and the pacing was pretty bad. The story was much worse than the gameplay. It's just full of boring cutscenes with boring dialogue, spoken by boring characters. And there's just way too much of it. This is another Sony movie game, where most of it is cutscenes instead of actual gameplay. So honestly, I can't give this game any higher than a 5.8 out of 10. I was gonna give it a 6, but then I remember how much of my time was wasted by watching these cutscenes. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Ghost of Tsushima. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe if you want, Patreon in the description if you want to support, and bye.